Linux In-Laws, a podcast on free Libre open source software. Broadcasting from the United Kingdom and Germany.
Welcome to Linux In-Laws, Season 2, Episode 67. Unfortunately, my co-host cannot be here tonight, so the only one on this podcast, apart from a few guests. And we do have clouds on the show, ownCloud and Nextcloud to be precise. But without further ado, why don't we do a little intro round? Let's start with you, Frank.
Yeah, great to be here again. Frank Kalicek is my name. You could say it's all my fault. So I started this many years ago, 16 years ago, first by launching ownCloud, which was a hobby project at the beginning that I did next to my other activities, where at some point then also a class joined, and we founded a company around it, and it was interesting times, not always successful, especially at the end, which then led to the foundation of my second project, Nextcloud, which is doing a lot better, and which I'm doing full-time nowadays, except of some working with politicians, lobbying, Eurostake, Eurooffice, lots of other things, but it's not just side projects.
A very modest introduction, Frank. Of course, there is a FLOSS talk. I think it was in 2016, where you actually explained how you forked the company, if I'm completely mistaken.
I don't know if it was 16, but yes, there was a FLOSS talk. You find it on YouTube, I think. Yeah, answers a lot of questions. Yeah.
So people if out there, if you want to know how to fork your own company, that's the talk you want to listen to. I'm joking. Over to you, Klaas.
Yes, my name is Klaas Freitag. Frank already introduced me. I'm today I'm CTO at OpenCloud, and I joined the ownCloud project in the very early days after Frank and me met in KDE. And Frank came up with this funny idea of having a private cloud back then, and I got attracted to that and started to implement, or started to think about how to implement a desktop sync client to sync files, and so we got into the whole business. That's how I got here into this podcast, which is the first time for me here. I'm pretty excited to be here.
Tobias, over to you.
Yeah, hi. I'm Tobias Bader. I'm the product manager of OpenCloud, and I also used to work at ownCloud back in the days. Nevertheless, in which company I worked, so my mission is usually to make open source software accessible to everyone. So I want that it is not only usable by nerds, but that everyone can use it. That's my personal mission, besides some business topics, but this is why I do this job. Yeah.
Before we go into the details of how these clouds work and what their kind of technical purpose are, if I'm not completely mistaken, you all come from ownCloud, but Frank forked the company, which became Nextcloud, but then ownCloud was again forked, yielding openCloud. If you can, Klaas or Tobias, maybe you can shed some light, if you want to, what happened and why you decided to fork ownCloud once again.
I think the initial intention was not to fork something. It was just the case that ownCloud, after some time, so when Frank left out to Nextcloud, I was continuing to work at OpenCloud, and after a short break, I came back to ownCloud. Sorry, I keep on mixing ownCloud, and all that. So I continued to work at ownCloud back then in 2016, and then left for 2 or 3 years and came back because of this new implementation, which was called ownCloud Infinite Scale. that was a pretty exciting technology for me, and that's why I got interested again. And after some time, the ownCloud company was acquired by a US company called Kiteworks, and that just turned the whole thing into a situation that I didn't want to continue to work in. And so I decided more or less to quit that job at ownCloud, and obviously found somebody who was interested in continuing this in this technology, which was interesting, and so we got a work contract there and continued there. Basically, that was the whole story. So the idea was not to really do a fork in the first place, but it was a good opportunity to continue with this open source project. Right?
I see. And Tobias kind of tagged along?
Yeah, almost the same motivation, I would say. So it was a very personal decision, of course. So the situation was that from one day to another, I had a new employer, and I never applied for a job at this new company. I just could sign a new contract or leave the company. So this is a situation where you usually don't want to be as an employee. And then, I remembered that forking is possible. And there was also another company which thought that the technology of infinite scale is necessary and is interesting. And so one thing came to another. And this is why the fork happened. As Klaus said, I don't think that forking was the main motivation. The motivation was to keep the technology alive, and this is why we did the fork.
Interesting. Changing tack a little bit. When Frank, I think, first came up with the idea of doing an open source project for your very own private cloud, mostly file synchronization at the time, and Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, because this whole Nextcloud ecosystem and the App Store came later. You chose PHP as the main technology, but when I take a close look at OpenCloud, this is somewhat different. Maybe Klaus or Tobias, maybe you can shed some light on what happened and why you chose a different route with regards to the tech stack that is OpenCloud, that OpenCloud basically is founded on.
I think you now mixed up clouds as well. You meant why we started a new technology in comparison to the old ownCloud or Nextcloud stack. Was that the topic?
If I recall correctly, you already kind of chose a different tech stack when you were already an ownCloud.
Yes.
With the Golang implementation, right?
Yes, that's true.
Maybe you can speak about this in comparison to, or maybe Frank actually can shed some more light on the initial code base before we change to the hipster approach. I'm joking. Frank, over to you.
Sure. So maybe it's important to talk about the original goal, because I believe that technology should not be religious or matter of taste or coolness or hipness, but different technologies serve different purposes, and this is how it was for this case. So the original idea was to have a decentralized, self-hosted alternative to the big tech companies. This was the original idea of ownCloud, that you don't need to go to Microsoft, Google, Dropbox, and so on, but you have your nice open source code, and you can basically have your own cloud. This is where the name comes from, obviously. But then the question is, of course, how can you host a cloud? Because hosting a server on the internet is complicated with scalability and backup and installation and DevOps and monitoring and all the things. So this goes beyond what a typical user likes to do. So the idea was that a lot of people, for example, at universities, they have their private homepage. I don't know if young people still remember what this is, but it basically means that, you have a web server root somewhere, and you can upload some files with FTP or whatever, and then you can have your little private homepage there. And a lot of students have that, like a digital business card, basically, like a photo, a name, an email address, and I don't know, talk about yourself a little bit. And also, if you're not on a university, you can have the same from like hosters. You get this from Strato, Hetzner, or whatever. You get like a web space. It's basically what's called web space at the time. And for very, very cheap, for free or for 1 or 2 euros, you get like, a few megabytes where you can have some files there. And the idea is to have a software that can use this web space basically to turn it into your own cloud. And lots of those web servers, they have PHP installed. It's a de facto standard for some website scripting thing that is present there. A lot of those cheap web spaces. There's also usually like support for SQLite, which is an embedded database that can be compiled into PHP itself. And this is basically and there's some web server, obviously, some Apache or Nginx or whatever. And this is usually like this web space that exists like a million or billion times on the internet. And the design goal was from ownCloud at the time that, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you can just take a zip file and unpack it into your web space, and it turns into your private cloud server. And you don't need root access. You don't need change config files. You don't even need shell access. You just unzip a zip file, and then it's working. And this was the original idea. And this is why I chose PHP, because this is what's possible with PHP. We also decided to not use an established PHP framework, because most of all PHP frameworks at the time, first of all, require special configurations in the web server, like rewrite rules and other things, which it should work with any installation. We don't want that. And also, these PHP frameworks, they usually don't support installations in subdirectories. And obviously, you don't get your own domain at a time. If you're like, I still remember when I was at University Tübingen, it was something like stud.unitübingen.de/students/username or something like that. And you only get like a directory somewhere. You obviously don't have your own domain. And this was the idea of ownCloud. It was also quite radical at the beginning, because the version 1.0 of ownCloud didn't even have a user management. So the idea was that every ownCloud has always exactly one user, which is the owner of this server, basically. And there is no second user on the same instance. Everybody who wants to have their own instance needs to have their own installation, basically. And collaboration between them works completely via federation, via communication between the different instances. This was the original idea. And this is why it's used PHP and also supports SQLite. Obviously, this kind of installation is only suitable for small ones. I mean, SQLite is not that fast. It's fine for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 users nowadays. But obviously, it can, with real databases, MariaDB, MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, and so on, it supports obviously a lot more users, millions of users nowadays. And also nowadays we support, of course, user management, identity management backends with Keycloak, LDAP, AD, and so on, where again you have millions of users on the same server. But this was something that was developed over time, but this was not the original idea. The idea is like, hey, just take a zip file, put it somewhere on the internet, and it works without further configuration. So that was the reason for picking PHP, and still to the day-to-day supporting this kind of installation and still supporting SQLite.
Full disclosure, the in-laws have been using Nextcloud for the last 6 years to organize the podcast, to schedule the shows and all the rest of it. And we are using just a small number of apps. And the calendar obviously would be one of them. So Frank, before we switch over to OpenCloud, when did the App Store come into existence, and what was the rationale behind this?
Yeah, so for me, it was always clear that it's not only about files. The file sync and share was obviously beginning, but there were I think it was already in the version 1.0 where I implemented, I'm telling like stories here from the past, right? But I implemented a key value store. I implemented a key value store that can be accessed from desktop applications. For example, the idea was that, hey, if I'm using a KDE or a GNOME desktop, and for example, you want to synchronize settings of your application between different computers. Let's say you have a laptop and a desktop, but you want to have all your Linux applications, your complete KDE desktop, looking the same. Then basically such an ownCloud can be used as sync backend. You can, for example, upload the whole configuration in this key value store. And then if you open your laptop and say, there's a new configuration, download it, apply it, and then you have the same on different devices. So this was, for example, a feature which, as far as I know, was never used by anyone. It was a complete failure. I think the KDE and GNOME people didn't like it or didn't understand it or didn't advertise it enough. I don't know. But so this was never used by anyone, and nowadays it's of course gone. But this was just an example. For me, this was a lot more than file sync and share. But your question was about the App Store. So the App Store came with version 2.0 of ownCloud. This was I would say, I think it was summer 2011, something like that, a little bit more than a year. And this is also why we had the apps concept in the first place, right? That we say, okay, this is not just one thing that synchronizes files, it's not enough, but it's actually more like a platform where you have different applications on top of, and file sync is one of it, but there should be many, many, many more things. And nowadays Nextcloud is quite a rich ecosystem of lots of things. We have over 600 of those apps from the community for, I don't know, cookbook, or I don't know, doing your finances, planning your vacation, doing whatever. I mean, it's crazy. There's so much creativity going on. And this was the idea. It was actually funny when one of the first memories I have when I remember how the story with ownCloud went wrong was when I then founded a company with two other people as co-founders. And at the first meeting, one of them proposed, this whole apps concept, we can kill this now, right? We don't need this. It's all about file sync and share. And I was like, okay, I have co-founders who don't know what they're talking about. That's how it was. For me, it was always clear that's a platform. Yeah.
Interesting, because I think the App Store and the ecosystem is what really makes a difference. But enough about, for the moment anyway, enough about Nextcloud. Klaas, why don't you talk a little bit about OpenCloud and why the change of technology and what motivated this kind of new approach?
Yes, but first let me go back to something Frank mentioned, which is, I think, really important, and that was this aspect of being able to run it everywhere. That I think that was one of the goals, as Frank just said, and the other goal the other dream that we had back then was to get completely free of Google services on personal devices. And I think for that time, that was really spectacular, and is actually one of the key reasons why we are still sitting here with these same topics, because bringing this kind of technology in a super easy way to people who use it was, I think, one of the key concepts of the early years. I think that's an important point here. why did we change technology? Well, actually, I haven't been in the company when that decision was made, but I know the reasons. Well, if you look into the situation of ownCloud back then, it became clear that Nextcloud is pretty successful and is doing very well on this technology of PHP and all what's around it. So I think people in ownCloud, especially engineers, were just kind of tired of trying to catch up. And so the idea was what can we do differently, and what can be interesting and can be an alternative approach to something. And at the time, new technologies like Docker, like virtualization in the cloud and all that stuff came up. And so people were excited about languages like Go, especially Go, because that was the new shit back then. And I think they started to look into it. And then there was another very important thing happening in CERN in Geneva, in this science organization. They were actually working with ownCloud for a very long time, and also patched a lot of things in the ownCloud core, and finally started also to experiment with a Go core module, which was called Reva. It's still existing. It's still in use. It's basically another approach of implementing a file sync and share backend, and ownCloud developers became interested in that and were collaborating with the CERN guys and jumped on it. And then it, of course, people came to the conclusion that this might be an interesting alternative approach to implement that, to make benefit of cloud deployments, of container technologies. The other aspect is this database-less design that we decided to use, and things like that. So, yeah.
And do you know why they particularly chose Golang rather than C++, Rust, or some other en vogue languages, I'm almost tempted to say?
I think Rust was not so popular back then. I think it was catching up very much in the last few years, but this decision was already made 5 or 6 years ago, when Go was actually pretty popular and popular for people who had fun to experiment with new technologies, right? They were going on Go, and on the opposite, I think C++ wasn't not very popular back then, because the new standards were not so common as they are now, let's say. And yeah, also for server backend, you probably don't choose C++. I hope nobody will hurt me for that, but yeah. Let's don't talk so much about programming languages. I don't think that's the point, actually. So Go is a nice language to implement stuff like that, stuff like backends. So why not choose it?
But there is no app store for this new stack, or is there?
Yes, there isn't. Well, there is an app store concept, and there is also an implementation, but it's not yet public in the way like it would be comparable with the Nextcloud app store. But we have that concept as well. The difference probably is that we want to be very careful about letting in new components for the whole system for security and compliance reasons. And that's why we haven't announced and pushed that idea yet.
Okay.
But there is more to come.
Frank, on this particular subject, the App Store for Nextcloud is curated, right? you can write apps, but they have to undergo some sort of vetting?
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. As Klaus said, the whole security is, of course, a very valid point that needs to be thought through properly. Because, bad applications has the potential to ruin everything. I mean, you have remote code execution and and the real meaning of the name. But on the other hand, also want to follow the Apple model with a walled garden, right? It has one brother who reviews everything. This is also not so cool. So I try to do is somehow find a way in the middle, which is hard, but that's what we're trying. Which means we have different, basically levels or labels of applications in the App Store. I think at the moment we have roughly 3 different levels. One is basically something that is that we call supported. This means these are applications that we as a company do first commercial support. This is what our customers get supported. And also, if you're not a customer, if you're just a community user, then you can still use the same apps, and you have the safety that there will always be updated, there will always be a new version. If there's a security problem, that will be fixed, and so on and so on. So these are basically the safe ones. There are a lot of coming from us, but also coming from other people, other companies, community. And these are the ones that are basically recommended on the production system, basically without any fear of issues. Then we have the second level, which is this comes from a third-party developer, not from us, and also not from a company or partner, or there's no contract or anything. But it is from someone who is trusted, basically. There are lots of people who come to our events all the time, lots of people we know for many, many years. A lot of people, they have an awesome track record of building Nextcloud apps for a long, long time. For example, there's what comes to mind, there's a Maps app, for example, for maps. There's this cookbook one that I mentioned earlier, which is quite popular. There is one called Memories, which is something to manage your photo collection. There's a music app, there's a podcast app. So these kind of apps are so established and so well known and so long tested. Lots of them exist for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So that they can also be trusted in a way. They're third party, they can be trusted. For that, we have some code signing process. So the people that we know, they sign their code with their certificates, and it then is uploaded to the App Store, and everybody can review or can check basically that the certificate is valid and it comes from this trusted person. And it can be, it doesn't come from us. There's no equity relationship, but it's basically in the open source spirit. There are basically people that are well known and doing a good job for a long time. And I think people can also use this stuff really safely. And then there's a third category, which is anything else, basically. So we don't want to block anonymous uploads from people to the App Store, because again, we don't want to have a walled garden. So we allow that, but of course no one knows what's in there, right? So it is PHP code and JavaScript code and stuff like server-side code, right? That can do all kinds of bad things. So these apps where no one knows where they're coming from, I would advise to really handle with the highest carefulness, don't trust them. Don't put them on a production system, I would recommend. But they're still there. There's still community there. We don't want to say no to it. There's good software there, but there's no trust relationship yet, basically, there. So this is how we do it at the moment.
Is OpenCloud thinking along the same lines in terms of security vetting?
Of course. I mean, security is the most important thing in the whole game, right? So we are dealing with with data of customers, of users, of people, and their security is the number one measure that you follow. So there's no tolerance for being sloppy with that, I would say. And I think Frank and we are completely on the same side on this. I think the concept that Frank just explained is pretty decent. I don't think we will at the moment strive for a similar concept because we are just not there yet. I mean, let's be blunt here. There are not so many applications yet and plugins yet. And there is also a technology difference because with our microservices architecture, it's a bit different to include apps in the backend. We have a very, very powerful and easy to use framework for front-end integrations. And you can do a lot with that already, but with backends, there's still some work to do to make it easy and to make it secure, to allow people to build very secure software in a way that we can prove that, right? That's our goal, I would say, that we want to be able to prove a certain level of security.
Changing tack a little bit, I'm specifically referring to Nextcloud now. For a couple of years, Nextcloud had my interpretation of the matter, and I know quite a few people who probably would agree, had two very important apps in the App Store, namely Collabora and something called OnlyOffice, which, if combined with Nextcloud, would come pretty close to what Microsoft actually calls Office 365 in terms of a way to collaborate on Office documents like slides, spreadsheets, and documents, as in text documents. But recently, Frank, and maybe now's the time to discuss this, there has been some shift, let's put it this way, towards OnlyOffice, because if the press is anything to go by, you actually forked OnlyOffice for a tighter integration with Nextcloud in favor, in contrast to Collabora. Maybe you can elaborate on this, and also what the brouhaha is with regards to this. I think it's a licensing thing, right?
Yeah, it's not about closer integration, but I can explain that. So I'm sorry, I need another 5, 6, 7 minutes. It's a bit complicated topic. So
by all means.
Yeah, but exactly as you said, like we have the goal to be Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace competitor, alternative replacement. And as you know, they all have file syncing, chat, video conferencing, calendar, AI, workflows, blah, blah, blah. But they also have an Office. With Office, I mean an option to edit Word, Excel, PowerPoint files in the browser collaboratively with different people, with different cursors at the same time, working in the same document. So this is what we're talking about here, because in the press there's sometimes a bit confusion that this is like an alternative to OpenDesk, or there's a lot of misunderstanding, which is not the case. We're talking about the Office editor component here. As far as I know, there are basically 4 of those Office components there. And by the way, the complexity of this software is super high. If you just want to type around a little bit and do some markdown or whatever, right? We also have that, but this is a completely different beast here. We're talking about editing of complex Excel sheets with formula and pivot tables and Visual Basic macros embedded and all kinds of weird things and complicated transitions in PowerPoint and working with 20-year-old Word documents again with embedded objects and embedded macros and so on. So this is quite complex. And to develop something like that, a full Office suite, this takes 10 or 20 years. So this is just huge. So we will never do that, and also think that no one else will do it who is like sane, because it is just gigantic project. So as far as I know, there are only 4 of those Office components in existence at the moment. There's obviously the one for Microsoft. It's called Microsoft Office Online. This was for a long time part of SharePoint. And this works. We have this, we can embed this Nextcloud. Obviously, this is not a recommended solution, right? We want to get rid of Microsoft and not rely on Microsoft, but it exists. Second option is Collabra. That's a company from the UK. They take LibreOffice, which we all know, I guess, and basically turn it into a web application. And this can be then embedded in Nextcloud, and you can work with your documents there. Then there's OnlyOffice, which is similar. Comes with some other challenges. I'll come back to this later. And then the fourth one is called Think Free Office. This is from South Korea. And it's another Office component. So to summarize, there's no way we can build it from scratch. We need to, if you want to compete with Microsoft, we need to have an Office. And we can choose between those 4, basically. Unfortunately, none of those 4 are perfect. Microsoft already mentioned, we don't want to use it. We want to get rid of Microsoft, not use it. So this is out of the question. Then we have the Think Free Office from South Korea. They're very nice people. They're partners of us. The software is not open source yet. They might open source it soon, I don't know. But the main problem is that the software is not on the same level. It is fine for some light editing. You can compare it with Google Docs, for example. But you cannot really work with like super complex old like Office documents, just not what it's built for. Which leads us to the other 2, Collabra and OnlyOffice. Collabra is our preferred solution for many, many years. We work closely together with them. The problem is not the license or the people or anything. It's all great. There is a bit of a problem with legacy technology because LibreOffice was never built to work in a browser. It's a desktop application. So what they did is basically they render everything on the server and then send like small pictures, like small, tiny pictures to the browser that are then put together into the real document and in the browser. Which is a bit of a crazy technology. It's like surprising that it works in the first place. It is a little bit like a different way of VNC remote desktop in a way. You're basically working with a LibreOffice running on the server somehow. And it's quite good nowadays, but you can still see the legacy. It's like, for example, if you scroll through big documents, it's slow. You can see that the rendering is sometimes it's not high DPI support. Sometimes it's just, you can see that it's not a native web application, basically. And we will keep on supporting that, and someone wants to have it. We have our partnership, and this is all great. But we thought we need to have something like more modern, basically. We tried to work with OnlyOffice for many years. It's difficult because they don't really understand open source. They don't accept pull requests. They don't understand the value of like the community edition. All the code is developed internally by them. All the comments are in Russian. Linked tickets, linked to internal tickets that no one else outside the company can access, obviously. So this is really difficult. But the main issue is, of course, that it's a Russian company. They're trying very, very hard to hide this. Sometimes they're a company from Latvia, then they're a company from London, then they're a company from Singapore. So they're trying really hard to hide this. But I know them, and it's a Russian company, which is not a problem in itself, right? I don't have any problems with Russian. We have Russians in Nextcloud. The problem is such an organization relies on what the Russian government tells them to do. Right? If they go to them and say, hey, wouldn't it be nice to have a nice backdoor in the Nextcloud installation of the German government? Would be cool. So this is not reliable, and lots of our public sector customers don't want that. So this, in the end, this was discussed for 3 years. I discussed this for over 3 years, which led to the thing that I really didn't want to do, but at the end, I had no choice to really fork OnlyOffice there. The lucky thing is that we are not the only ones with this problem. So this is done by a coalition of several companies. There's Proton from Switzerland, there's Jonas from Germany, there's XWiki from France, there's Open Project, there's Open Exchange, several others and us, and we all contribute 5 to 10 developers. And then together we are confident that we can develop these Office suites forward and have it as a solution for our users, basically. So yeah, obviously our friends from Only Office didn't like that, so they probably saw all the comments and the angry blog posts, but very quickly they realized that their arguments are not that strong. I mean, they have sentences in the license which says like, hey, you have to use our logo. Next sentence, you're not allowed to use our logo. So quite some nasty tricks. So yeah, everybody in the open source community realized that this is just nasty tricks. And we got support from all the important people and organizations, Free Software Foundation, Software Freedom Conservancy, Bradley Kuhn, who is the original author of the AGPL license in the first place, supports us, other organizations too. So this led to the situation that Only Office quickly realized that their position is not really that great. And then they sent another blog post which basically says, yeah, it's fine, you can do it. Just give us some attribution, which I'm happy to do. So yeah, we will add some attribution saying this code is based on Only Office, and then the licensing fighting is hopefully over and we have a good solution for our community.
Okay, that has been a somewhat lengthy discussion, but I think that clears up the controversy that has been relayed in the press or conveyed in the press, so to speak. Changing tack just a little bit, and you already touched upon this. In the light of the stride for independence, I'm almost tempted to say, in terms of this, not to use this overly used term, digital sovereignty, more and more, and you see this clearly in the government space across all of Europe, France, Germany, just to name the two countries here that are really making or are progressing towards self-hosted solutions, becoming more independent from the likes of the hyperscalers like Microsoft, Google, and all the rest of them. Where do you see, and that goes, of course, for OpenOffice, where do you see this market going forward? And maybe let's start with OpenOffice.
I'm sure you mean OpenCloud.
Sorry, of course I meant OpenCloud. So where do you see this going?
Yeah, we see mixing up names here a lot. Everybody does that. Where do we see the market going? I mean, I'm probably the worst person you can ask that question. I think it's growing and it's becoming more important in every aspect of life. But maybe I hand over this question to Tobias. He's our product manager and he can probably say much more about this.
Yeah, so of course, we are very happy to see the increasing demand, huge increase of demand for sovereign software. So one of our best employees, you could say, is in the Oval Office, and maybe that's also true for your company, Frank. So I think this is very good news on the one hand. The bad news on the other hand is that this is still less too far demand, to be honest. So we need to invest much more in free software to get to the level where we need to be to really compete with big tech. And on the one hand, it's a very good signal that there is increasing awareness for the whole topic. On the other hand, it's still there's so much more work to do, and I would say we need more, maybe 5 to 10 years until we are there where big tech is. So there's lots of work to be done yet.
maybe along these lines, if I may, this is also an interesting topic here. Why are there more than one player in this market, right? People keep asking us, why is it needed to have another alternative implementation of a file sync and share platform, if you want so? And I think that is one aspect of the growing market and perception of sovereignty here is actually that there are more than one implementation covering different aspects and different needs of people, and that's why it's good to have that. Actually, if you are honest, what would it be if Nextcloud would be the only player in this market? That I'm very sure, as I know Frank, he wouldn't feel good about that, because that would put him in another monopoly situation that is not helping for sovereignty. So a little bit of alternatives, I think, is good.
Over to you, Frank. Any thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is in the spirit of open source, that there are that forking is possible, and that others can stand on the shoulders of giants. And there's this ecosystem, and there's code sharing going on. To tell a little bit of a secret is actually when Klaas and I met last time, we talked about some code sharing in both directions. So why not? I mean, this is in the spirit of open source. This is a good thing. Yeah.
So you heard it here first. The two companies will eventually merge. I'm joking.
Code sharing is the first step. step 225 is then merging the companies. Yeah.
No, I'm joking, people. That has been more than a riveting almost hour. And with that, if there's nothing more we should touch upon, maybe it's now time to come to the boxes, if you're so inclined. So over to you, Tobias. What is your box? What is your pick of the week?
I want to remember, I think it's one of the hacker ethics, which is called mistrust authority, promote decentralization. So when we last met in Oslo at a conference, we all agreed on implementing or supporting OCM, which is a decentralized protocol for exchanging files. And I think this is very important to keep up the free internet as we want to have it. Because imagine if email would be invented today. How would it look like? I think you could also only send emails from Gmail to Gmail and Outlook to Outlook and Yahoo to Yahoo, but not in a real decentralized, federated matter. And this is not by accident. This is because some clever people had the idea of building the internet to be international and decentralized. And what I want to say is, if we look at technology today, we should also always have a look if this technology builds towers of power and is adding up power to some individuals, or does it give power to the people? And yeah, this is my reminder. I would like to call out. Mistrust authority, promote decentralization.
Almost sounds like the Chaos Computer Club back in the 80s. Just for the benefit of the audience, Tobias, OCM refers to ownCloud Mesh, I suppose?
Yes.
Okay. Details, of course, within the show notes. Over to you, Klaas.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very close to what Tobias said, but what I like to point out is what you see recently is that people started very much to help each other to understand technology and to use it, in a sense that there are these digital independence days where people come together, and not only nowadays, not only that they meet nerds installing stuff with nerds and talking about technology, but it's more that we reach out to, in quotes, normal people trying to improve their situation in using technology and using better technology probably for them. And what I think is really positive is that the open source community and all the people involved in that now makes this step towards this outside non-geeky world, trying to help people to change their digital life a bit. And for me being in open source for I don't know how many years, I think that is a very positive step. Probably that has always happened to some degree, but my perception is that this is gaining more traction at the moment, which I think is very positive, and I'd like to point that out.
Frank, over to you. What's your POX?
Sorry, what's the what?
What's your POX?
POX?
Pick of the week, yes.
Pick of the week. I hope it's okay if I pick a Nextcloud app.
Absolutely, anything goes.
Yeah, something I really like, and I mentioned it earlier already, is the Memories app. That's an app by a contributor, very nice person. It's one of the main use cases of Nextcloud to synchronize your photos and then put them into nice galleries and share them with your friends and family, and also have them collaboratively. And for example, if you have a party, then everybody can upload their photos and everything's put together into one big slideshow. And the interesting thing here is why I picked it is we actually have a solution. It's called Nextcloud Photos inside Nextcloud. And this comes with every Nextcloud. But it has limits like every software. And this community person basically decided like, hey, we need something better, and just build something better. Now it's in the App Store and it's like super popular. So this is something that is like super cool that the community does that. And another thing I find interesting is we really see Nextcloud as a platform, not really as one product. So some people might think that all this is competition. Why is the community person doing a third-party app which is competing with something that is shipped as part of Nextcloud? But I don't really see it that way. I really see it as a platform where it's absolutely cool if there are several apps doing the same thing. Very similar, as you said earlier, that is very cool that OpenCloud and Nextcloud exist. So why not? This doesn't have to be competition. This can be just like different people trying different strategies, but going the same direction. And this is why I'm a fan of this Memories app from our community, because it is, it's the strength of the platform to have third-party apps competing with first-party apps, basically.
I mean, this is one of the core principles of free Libre open source software, right? Freedom of choice. And the F is actually the hint here, because if you don't like it, choose something else.
Yeah.
And with that, people, I would like to thank you for a very interesting hour. And of course, we must have you back once you've merged the companies, if not before.
Definitely. Yeah, and by the way, thanks for this nice surprise. I think Klaas and Tobias and I had no idea that we have the conversation here together. Realized this 1 minute before the recording when we all met here. So you really surprised us here.
In a very good way, I hope.
Of course.
And hope to meet you at some stage at FrostCon in Chemnitz or wherever, and then we must have a beer, and of course the beer will be on the in-laws. Guys, with that, thank you for being here, and speak to you soon. This is the Linux in-laws.
You come for the knowledge,
but stay for the madness.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you like this feature presentation. If so, please spread the word. If not, please let us know. Feedback at linuxinlaws.eu.